If you've ever had a day where your symptoms suddenly spike, more pain, more fatigue, more fear, and it makes you wonder whether everything is getting worse, this episode will help you understand why bad days happen and how to move through them without losing hope. Welcome back to Renegade Remission. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why symptoms and emotions can fluctuate dramatically during illness, learn what biology reveals about why some days feel harder than others, and I'll share a simple bad day protocol you can use anytime your body or mind feels heavier than usual. One of the most confusing parts of living with illness is how unpredictable the body can become. You have a day where you feel stronger, clearer, more hopeful, and then the next morning you wake up feeling like everything has suddenly reversed again. Your pain returns, your fatigue deepens, your mood feels far heavier than it did just the day before. When this happens, many people immediately assume something is wrong. It can feel as though progress has disappeared overnight or that the illness is suddenly taking control again. But in many cases, what you're experiencing is not failure or regression. It's the natural variability of a complex biological system that makes us up as human beings. Human physiology does not operate in a perfect, steady line. Hormones rise and fall. Immune activity changes throughout the day, stress signals fluctuate, sleep affects nearly every system in the body, and even small environmental or emotional factors can influence symptoms. When the body is already dealing with illness, those normal fluctuations often become more noticeable. What feels like a dramatic setback may actually be a temporary shift in one of the systems your body relies on to regulate itself. Understanding this variability can change the way people interpret difficult days. Instead of seeing them as proof that healing has stopped or that something is terribly wrong, many people learn to view them as temporary waves in a much larger process. Before we begin with the science behind these fluctuations, let's begin with a real survivor story of learning to live with unpredictable symptom days. Writer Sarah Ramey spent years living with a complex chronic illness that affected nearly every aspect of her life. In her memoir, she describes cycles of debilitating symptoms that included severe pain, fatigue, digestive problems, and neurological disturbances that doctors struggled to diagnose clearly. One of the most disorienting aspects of her illness was how unpredictable her body became. Some days she would wake up feeling almost normal, able to work, socialize, or move through daily life with relative ease. On other days, the same body that had felt manageable the day before suddenly felt overwhelmed again. These fluctuations were deeply confusing to her. When symptoms returned after a stretch of better days, she often interpreted them as proof she was getting worse or that the progress she thought she had made was an illusion. Over time, however, Sarah began noticing that her illness did not move in a straight line. Periods of improvement and worsening often appeared together. A difficult day did not necessarily erase the gains that had come before it. In her memoir, she reflects on how learning to expect fluctuation changed her emotional response to those difficult days. Instead of interpreting every setback as evidence of failure, she began to view symptom variability as part of living with a complex illness. This shift did not eliminate the difficult days themselves, but it helped her respond to them with less panic and self-blame. Gradually, she developed a steadier relationship with the ups and downs of her health, recognizing that difficult days could exist alongside gradual progress. Although bad days can feel random, there are several biological reasons symptoms and emotions fluctuate from one day to the next, and understanding these mechanisms can make those difficult days feel far less mysterious and frightening. One important factor is inflammation. Immune signaling molecules fluctuate throughout the day and respond to many influences, including stress, sleep quality, infections, diet, and physical exertion. Even in healthy individuals, inflammatory markers rise and fall across a 24-hour cycle. When someone is living with illness, these changes can become more noticeable and can temporarily influence symptoms such as fatigue, pain, or brain fog. Another major influence is the nervous system. Chronic illness places significant demand on the body's stress regulation systems. When the nervous system becomes overloaded, symptoms such as fatigue, headaches, dizziness, or emotional overwhelm can intensify temporarily. Researchers describe this as allostatic load, a concept developed by neuroscientist Bruce McEwen to explain how repeated stress can make physiological systems more reactive. Immune activity can also contribute to these fluctuations. When the immune system becomes activated, whether it's by infection, inflammation, or tissue repair, it can produce a set of temporary symptoms known as sickness behavior. These include fatigue, reduced motivation, brain fog, and low mood. While uncomfortable, these responses are part of how the body conserves energy while managing immune challenges. Hormones also play a powerful role in how the body feels on any given day. Cortisol, melatonin, thyroid hormones, and reproductive hormones all influence energy, mood, inflammation, and pain sensitivity. Small shifts in these systems can create noticeable changes in how a person feels from one day to the next. Sleep is another major driver of symptom variability. Even subtle disruptions in sleep quality can increase inflammatory signaling, alter pain sensitivity, and reduce cognitive clarity the following day. When illness already places strain on the body, these sleep-related changes can amplify symptom fluctuations. Finally, emotional and psychological factors influence physical symptoms far more than many people realize. Stress, grief, uncertainty, and trauma can all activate the same biological pathways that affect inflammation, hormones, and nervous system regulation. On some days, the mind simply carries heavier emotional weight, and the body often reflects that load. When these systems interact, immune activity, hormones, sleep, stress, and energy metabolism, symptoms can shift from day to day even when the underlying illness itself has not dramatically changed. Understanding these biological fluctuations can change how difficult days are interpreted and perceived. A bad day does not automatically mean the illness has suddenly worsened or that progress has been lost. It simply reflects the natural variability of complex systems trying to themselves. Recognizing this can reduce the emotional impact of those bad days. Instead of immediately assuming the worst, it becomes more possible to view these as temporary shifts that may stabilize again with time, rest, and support. As promised, here's a bad day protocol with practical action steps that you can follow when symptoms begin to flare. The first is intentionally shifting into lower demand mode for the day. Reducing expectations for productivity and allowing more rest can allow the body to stabilize rather than pushing systems that are already under strain. Comfort becomes particularly important on these difficult days. Warmth, quiet environments, gentle stretching, hydration, soothing music, or simply lying down with supportive pillows can help reduce the physiological load the body is carrying. Another helpful step is naming the experience directly. Saying something out loud, like, "My body is having a harder time today," can interrupt catastrophic thinking before it escalates. This simple acknowledgement reminds the brain that temporary fluctuations are part of the process of living with illness. Providing signals of safety to the nervous system can also help the body settle. Slow, intentional breathing with a longer exhalation than inhalation, humming, placing a hand over your heart and belly, or simply sitting quietly and noticing the environment around you can activate calming neural pathways that reduce physiological stress. One of my favorite tools that I use myself is podcast episode 63, Your Daily Healing Visualization, a guided meditation to reset your body and mind in 10 minutes. Doing this meditation on days that feel particularly hard can really help reset the tone of the day. It is also wise to avoid making major conclusions about the future on a bad day. When symptoms are intense, the brain often interprets them as permanent or catastrophic. Waiting until symptoms settle before evaluating your progress or making decisions regarding your healthcare plan can prevent unnecessary fear and poor decisions. Finally, many people find it helpful to keep track of good days as well as difficult ones. Recording moments when symptoms improve, energy rises, or joy returns can provide perspective during harder periods and remind us that fluctuation goes both directions. Journaling is one of your most powerful tools during your healing journey. Living with illness often means learning to navigate a body that no longer behaves in completely predictable ways. Some days will feel lighter and easier, and others may feel heavier and more uncertain. These fluctuations can be frustrating, but they do not mean your body has stopped trying to regulate itself. Beneath those changing symptoms, complex biological systems are constantly adjusting, responding, and seeking balance. Difficult days are not the whole story of your health. They rarely define the direction your body is ultimately moving. And with patience, understanding, and supportive habits, Many people learn to move through those days with greater steadiness and far less fear, trusting that tomorrow will feel different again. In our upcoming episodes, I'll continue discussing nutrition and lifestyle strategies for your healing journey, so stay tuned for those episodes, and as always, go be renegades.